Story 1. In 2003, the company I worked for closed down, so I began looking for a new job. I was a machinist with a solid reputation, so it didn't take long, less than a day, in fact, for me to secure a new position. The company I joined, which I'll call Spiral, specialized in making highly specific tools. I started as one of the machine operators. The place was owner-operated, meaning the owner was present daily. There was also a floor supervisor who was genuinely kind and supportive. After about a year, the owner and the supervisor had a falling out, and the supervisor left. For reasons I never fully understood, the owner, whom I'll call Dick, decided to put me in charge. Now, a bit of backstory on Dick. He was in his 60s at the time and had started the company in his garage in his 20s. He went on to buy a significant piece of land, which he turned into an industrial park. By then, he was one of the wealthiest individuals in the state. However, he was also one of the most difficult people I had ever worked with. Dick treated most of his employees terribly, yelling at them, micromanaging, and creating a toxic environment. Oddly enough, he treated me and one other person slightly better, but even then, he wasn't kind. If I so much as talked to the other employee during work hours, Dick would lose his temper and scream at us. My promotion came with a catch. It financially trapped me. Dick kept my pay just high enough that I couldn't afford to leave, but low enough to ensure I felt undervalued. While talking to me, he often bragged about his wealth and business acumen. During these conversations, he also let slip some questionable practices. For instance, Dick would cook the company's financial books. He had created two separate entities, one for the industrial park and another for Spiral. He deliberately charged Spiral inflated rent to make it look like the company was barely breaking even. He also admitted to burying industrial waste on his property to save money, proudly noting how much he had avoided spending on proper disposal. Over the next decade, Dick made my life miserable. He treated me and my team poorly, kept wages stagnant, and pushed turnover to an almost unbelievable 95%. At one point, even temp agencies refused to send workers to us because of how bad the conditions were. Despite the challenges, I managed to expand my responsibilities over time. I carefully worded my requests and convinced Dick to let me use the title of plant manager. While I didn't have a college degree, this title, along with the experience I gained, was a game changer for my resume. Eventually, I began job hunting in earnest. After 6 months, I secured a position at a company offering significantly better pay and benefits, something Spiral never provided. The new company required me to give a 2-week notice, but I had seen enough at Spiral to know how things worked. Anyone who gave notice was immediately shown the door. So, I chose not to say anything until my very last day. At the end of that day, I sat at my desk and sent emails to 2 contacts I had built relationships with over the years, one at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration (OSHA) and another at the state's Environmental Protection Agency (EPA). I detailed all the violations Dick had bragged about, from safety concerns to improper waste disposal. I also sent an email to the state attorney's office regarding the financial discrepancies Dick had mentioned. After sending the emails, I left my keys on my desk along with a note that simply said, "I quit." A few months later, I heard from my OSHA contact. Spiral ended up being fined $150,000 for several willful safety violations. My contact at the EPA told me they had to dig up half of Dick's property before he finally admitted to where he had buried the industrial waste. The last update I received was that Dick had been sent to jail. Story 2. About 3 years ago, I had an experience that I recently shared with my partner. It involved my German Shepherd, Deuce. I got Deuce as a gift when I was 21. I'm 26 now, and he's the sweetest dog you'll ever meet. He's friendly with other dogs, has never bitten anyone, and absolutely loves kids, which is important for later. At the time, I had just graduated from college and landed a job at a tech company. I moved into a neighborhood that was not only close to work, but also had a spacious backyard for Deuce to run around in. After about a month, I met one of my neighbors, a kind older man we'll call Hank. During some small talk, I mentioned Deuce, and Hank immediately looked concerned. He warned me. You might want to keep him inside. Karen hates dogs. I asked who Karen was, and he pointed to the house on the other side of mine. He explained that she despised dogs and had even called the police on someone for allegedly letting their dog poop on her lawn. I laughed it off, said goodbye to Hank, and went back inside to check on Deuce. A week later, I let Deuce outside to run in the backyard. I watched him closely to ensure he didn't try climbing the fences, a habit he'd attempted when staying with my parents. While keeping an eye on him, I noticed a young boy, whom I'll call Little Guy, approach the gate. He excitedly called out, "Doggy, doggy." At first, it was adorable, but then I noticed he was holding a wooden stake. To my shock, Little Guy tried to slash at Deuce through the fence. Thankfully, his small arms couldn't reach, and I quickly called Deuce back. I walked over and calmly asked the boy what he was doing. I didn't yell, I just raised my voice slightly. Realizing he'd been caught, Little Guy tossed the stake near his shed and ran inside. I didn't think much of it at the time, so I brought Deuce inside to check that he was okay. Not long after, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, there stood Karen with Little Guy behind her. "Are you the one who yelled at my kid?" she demanded. I took a deep breath and replied, "I didn't yell, but I did raise my voice back." She interrupted, "How dare you yell at my baby?" I tried explaining. "Well, ma'am, your baby tried to stab my dog." She glanced past me and saw Deuce lounging on the couch. "No, he did not. My Little Guy would never do such a thing. And even if he did, your dog probably had it coming." At this point, I was losing my patience. All I could manage was, "What?" She launched into a tirade about how that type of dog is dangerous, and how people like you are why others get mauled by dogs. I had enough. "Bye," I said, closing the door and giving Deuce a treat. About an hour later, there was another knock. Assuming it was Karen again, I rolled my eyes. To my surprise, it was the police. Behind them stood Karen, grinning like she'd won. "Can we help you, officers?" I asked. One officer explained, "We received a report that your dog attacked this child. Is that true?" Realizing what Karen had done, I replied, "No, officers. Her child tried to stab my dog. She should have been watching him." "Can you back that up?" asked the second officer. "Check near her shed," I said. "You'll find what he tried to use." They searched and found the wooden stake, but still seemed unsure. "Can we see the dog in question?" one officer asked. I called Deuce over, and he ran up excitedly, wagging his tail. I gave him a few commands, which he followed perfectly. "See? He's very obedient and would never harm a child," I said. Just then, Hank appeared, having witnessed the whole thing from his yard. "Officers, I saw it with my own eyes. The kid had something in his hand and tried to use it on the dog." The officers turned to Karen for her side of the story. She spun an absurd tale about how I supposedly ordered Deuce to attack her son because he was playing too loudly. The officers exchanged glances, apologized to me, and turned to Karen. They issued her a fine for lying to the police and wasting their time. Karen looked utterly shocked that her hastily crafted story didn't work. For the next week, I kept an even closer eye on Deuce whenever he was outside. Karen gave me dirty looks and even emailed me, threatening to sue for child endangerment and emotional distress. Nothing ever came of it. Hank and I still laugh about the incident to this day. Update. Thanks for all the support. Since this happened, I've installed security cameras and caught Karen trespassing a few times. I've also been extra cautious with Deuce when he's outside. Recently, Karen confronted me again. She's now divorced, not surprising, and her ex-husband won custody of Little Guy. She approached me with obviously fake tears, claiming it was all my fault because the police report had been used against her in court. I stared at her for a moment, then walked away without a word. Just in case she tries anything malicious, like poisoning Deuce, I've gotten permission to build a higher fence on my property. I'm currently in the process of doing that. Story 3. Background: I'm a 35-year-old father of 2 boys. I have PTSD due to time overseas and have the physical scars to match the mental scars. I have an incredible wife that knows me and knows what situations I should avoid. My children are amazing, but this story revolves around my youngest son and my service dog. Jay, my youngest son, has autism, and we share a special bond because some things that set him off also put my teeth on edge. Spike, my English bulldog. He's my service dog. He's well-trained, lazy, judgmental, and overall uninterested in anything he can't eat. He's also very in tune to Jay and my emotions, and will provide a distraction when we get overwhelmed. Basically, he's like, "Oh, you're stressed. Here, scratch my butt. You'll feel better and I'll get attention." It's a win-win. The story: my family recently moved to Texas. Because we now live very close to an amusement park, we got memberships. Shout out to the park for being amazing when it comes to special needs. This particular park in Arlington, Texas, has a special program for autistic people. They have rooms set aside to chill at. If you're overstimulated, so you can relax, go back out, get overstimulated again, and round you go. With Jay, we also don't have to wait in lines. This is a huge thing and the cause of this story. The park has a pass that lets you skip most of the lines, and they charge an arm and a leg for this. However, with that pass, you still end up in a line of the hundreds of people that also have that pass. Jay gets no lines at all. We get a special pass, and we go in through the exit. The worker signs the pass, and we go on the ride. Jay has a favorite ride, the log ride. There have been days that we would ride the log ride over and over. Then eat. We also have the food pass, which we pay for, then go back to the log ride. On this day, T, my oldest, and Jay wanted to go on the log ride, so we made our way to the exit and left wife and Spike in the shade because someone had to stay with him, and bulldogs plus rides don't mix. As we were going in the exit, a woman started screaming at us. I have absolutely no hearing on my right side thanks to the high-pressure wave, so I didn't consider it worth turning my head to listen. Now, because we ride this ride almost exclusively, the workers on this ride know us by name and sight. Jay even talks to them, which is rare. We go in, show the pass, sit and ride. This time though, Karen, the woman that was screaming at us as we were walking in through the out, made her way to where the speedy pass ends at the ride, where a red shirt will check her pass and let her go on her way. She didn't even want to ride. She just wanted to yell about us going in through the exit and how we are abusing the system. Now anyone that looks at Jay can see he's in a world all his own and wouldn't be surprised if he's literally reading the future or talking to aliens. He's awesome. The red shirt tries to calm her down. Jay was making his excited sounds and waiting for the log to stop so he could get in. We get in, and as we float away, we still hear Karen screaming. The ride ends and we exit. We figured we would never see Karen again, but obviously as I'm point this, it didn't go that way. Karen appeared like a dark brother after making the sacrifice Elder Scrolls reference, hooting and screaming. She is screaming that just because Jay is an R word doesn't mean we get extra rights. The screaming causes Jay to let out his super screech. Now anyone that knows autism knows that autistic kids have superpowers. In Jay's case, it's a supersonic ear-shattering high-pitched screech that makes your eyes swim and makes it feel like things in your head are moving that shouldn't. This whole time Spike was laying on the ground in the froggy position, as bulldogs do, just looking at Karen like she's a rabid dog, but not worth getting up for. As we are being screamed at, I see 2 officers approaching from behind Karen. I smile. My smile must have broken Karen because she hauls off and kicks Spike. This flips my switch because now my family is literally under attack, and I start to react. Before I could make contact, Karen is already in the air, being held, carried, half dragged away while being cuffed. Now in front of me is a well-dressed and pissed-looking officer. He tells us he heard the screech and started heading to it because they thought a ride broke or something had happened. I take the time to unflip that switch and examine Spike. He's limping and crying. I feel his hips and feel that his hip is dislocated. I jokingly ask the officer to walk away and let me get some. He of course has no humor to this, but also can tell I had a career. He asked what happened, and we all explained what happened from A to Z. He asks if Spike is a service dog. I say yes. He smiles. I'm not in a smile mood, but it catches me off guard. He explains that in Texas to intentionally injure a service dog is a felony. By this time, park security arrived and issued a trespass order to Karen. The officers ask if I want to press charges. I look at Spike and look back. Yes, I say. Karen and her husband start to freak out as Karen is loaded onto a golf cart. We hop on a cart too and leave to go to the vet. The vet treated Spike and all is well. We went back the next day with Spike in a stroller. No one batted an eye and everyone loved the bulldog in a stroller. I let people pet him. He's a hoot and the park is an amazing place. I've been contacted by the investigating officer and have given depositions. I may have to testify, but I look forward to sitting on the bench with Spike on my lap. Story 4. I was driving home from work and traffic was backed up pretty badly for a few miles. It was stop and go. When I get stuck in that, I'll usually back about 75 feet off the car in front of me so that I can hold a pace and move at a slow, but constant roll like the semi-trucks do. This way I'm not participating in the bumper-to-bumper move and brake like the rest of the smooth brain drivers. Some dude in an Acura crossover was behind me, and I guess he was getting upset because I wasn't 2 feet from the car in front of me, driving like a smooth brain. So he gets up on me and starts beeping his horn at me. Lol, I thought to myself as I turned up my radio. But then he starts flashing his brights at me, which is where I get annoyed. He's one of those people that has the super bright LED headlights. My car is much lower than his, so his low beams are already pretty bright in my mirrors. Bright enough that I don't want to look at them. The first time he flashed his high beams, it put spots in my vision for a moment. It genuinely hurt my eyes. After the first flash, he waits for about 10 seconds, beeps his horn, and then flashes me again. Now I'm getting mad. I'm thinking, where do you want me to go? Do you really think being 2 feet from the car in front of you will make traffic move faster? Then he flashes me a third time, but this time he held them on for about 15 seconds. Time for the gloves to come off. During those 15 seconds, as I'm looking away from my mirrors, I see my 14,000 lumen searchlight sitting in my passenger seat, at which point I'm immediately overcome by a wave of chaotic lawful excitement. What he has just set in motion cannot be stopped. I think to myself, oh buddy, you just opened the wrong can of worms. You're gonna learn today. I grab the flashlight and set it to its absolute max 14,000 lumen brightness setting. The flashlight has a sensor in it to automatically dim the light if facing down on a table, because otherwise the diodes would get so hot they would melt the lens. The 14,000 lumen setting is so intense, the 57 watt-hour battery can only hold it for 180 seconds before the flashlight automatically notches down to a measly 9,500 lumens. During those 180 seconds, the light will burn through 15% of its battery power. For reference on just how bright this is, the literal sun emits a luminosity of 11,000 lumens per square foot on a bright and clear day. I turn around and aim it straight out the back of my rear window. My car is pretty noisy, so before I turn it on, I rev up my engine to make sure Captain Smooth Brain is eyes forward when I violate his retinas with the full force of an afternoon sun. I hit the power button and can only imagine the freight train of shock and pain that plowed over this man. It was so bright, his automatic headlights shut off because the car thought it was daytime. With the light on, I could see him clear as glass through his tinted windshield. He was covering his eyes and looking down, probably screaming. I watched him try and flip down his sun visor, but his hand couldn't find it. As I thought to myself, burn you jerk, burn. I imagine my facial expression was similar to that of a 6-year-old roasting insects with a magnifying glass on a bright summer day. After about 5 seconds of blinding light, I took mercy and shut it off. He proceeded to back off and move over to a different lane. Was this an unsafe thing for me to do? Absolutely. Was this illegal? Almost certainly. Was it warranted? Without question. Possibly the highlight of my year. Drive safe, and don't be a jerk to the car in front of you, because they might just have the tools to teach you a lesson. Story 5. This happened long enough ago, and the bully, let's call him Tom, and his family have moved away, so I feel safe telling this story. Background. My nephew, let's call him Ethan, went to primary school about 2 blocks away from me. Since both of his parents, my sister and my brother-in-law, worked, we had an arrangement that Ethan would come stay with me after he got out of school until his parents could come pick him up and take him home. Since I worked from home, I was able to help Ethan with homework, make snacks, and play with him. It was a pretty cozy arrangement. Ethan and I are pretty close, and we had lots of fun playing catch in the yard. He's now pitching baseball, getting my butt kicked in video games, and even just relaxing with a good movie. Overall, life was pretty good, except for one problem. That problem was named Tom, another kid who was across the street from me and was in the same grade as Ethan. Beginning in maybe 4th grade, Tom decided that Ethan would make a good target and would bully him on the walk to my house. It wasn't unusual for Ethan to show up with bruises or tears in his eyes because of the various crap Tom pulled. Ethan never would fully tell us, out of fear wanting to protect us, what the heck was going on. This became such a problem that Ethan's parents and I complained to the principal and even tried asking our local police department what we should do. Unfortunately, their advice or response was all the same. Ignore him. We can't do anything because there's no proof not happening on school grounds. Make friends with him. Kids will be kids, etc. Since the attacks were happening during the walk to my house, I started showing up at Ethan's school to walk him to the nearby baseball field to practice pitching and batting. This worked for a couple of weeks and Tom was never a problem, probably because he saw the baseball bat I was carrying, and I'd look at him with, "I will not be afraid to use this on you if you pick on Ethan around me," glaring in my eyes. Unfortunately, this just led to the bullying happening at school, and it was even worse this time around because Ethan needed his auntie to help him. Once again, the school did nothing because they're about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. We even went to Tom's parents, begging them to knock some sense into their son. I won't go too much into that confrontation because we'll be here forever. But let's just say that the home environment was probably a good reason for why Tom was picking on Ethan. During this time, Ethan was miserable. He was too afraid to go outside and play because Tom would be there to harass him, and he admitted to me later that while he loved me and was happy that I'd walk him home, he wanted to be a big boy and take care of his own problems. To say that Ethan's parents and I were at our wits' ends is an understatement. We wanted to help him more than anything, but with both Ethan being withdrawn and being out of resources, it was safe to say our hands were tied. That was until one evening in the middle of Ethan's summer vacation, between 4th and 5th grade. I was watching the news when I came upon a special on corvids, ravens and crows. A research team did an experiment on wild crow ravens to test their memory, and it turned out that these birds not only had a sharp memory, but would attack anyone who did another crow harm. The best part? They never forget. Even after several weeks, months, they remembered the good bad people. I knew we had a local murder, a flock of crows, nearby, and decided to put this little tidbit of knowledge to the test. The setup. With only 2 months to go until school started again, and Tom High's family away on vacation and summer camps, I didn't waste time. I bought a huge bag of bird seed, and at the times Ethan would walk home, I would walk the path and drop little handfuls of bird seed in full view of the crows, always remembering to take a different route to get to the school, so that way the crows wouldn't get confused. It took maybe a week or so before I'd notice more crows arriving, and they eventually started leaving shiny things, bottle caps, buttons, discarded gum wrappers, etc., for me to find. Once I was sure I had the crows knowing I was the good guy, I brought Ethan into this. We'd walk the path and feed the crows. Soon enough, the crows would start coming out, and we'd be friendly with them, giving them names and listening to them gossip while sharing news of our own. We must have looked really weird to the neighbors, but Ethan really enjoyed it and even looked up things about corvids on his own. He learned the shiny stuff the crows were leaving were a form of currency. Thank you presents. Thinking this could be helpful, he started collecting other shiny things for the crows and would leave those in addition to the bird seed. With 2 weeks to go until school started up again, I began phasing myself out of the afternoon feeding times, so eventually it was Ethan who was feeding the crows, leaving gifts on the walk home. The day before school started, I gave Ethan a bag of bird seed in addition to his shiny things and winked at him. The revenge. Sure enough, at the same time Ethan would come home, I heard the crows cawing and what I thought was a little girl screaming. I stepped outside and saw Tom running towards his house, the crows dive-bombing him and pecking at him. Further down the path, Ethan was laughing so hard at the sight of his bully running and screaming like a little girl that he fell to the ground. Tom peeled into his house and locked the door as I walked over to Ethan and helped him up. Of course, I had to get the juicy details, so I asked what happened. Ethan was walking home, spreading the bird seed and leaving the shiny things per usual. About halfway home, Tom pounced, making some nasty cracks I won't repeat here before punching Ethan. And that's when a crow dive-bombed Tom. When he tried hitting it away, more and more showed up until the whole murder, who were watching, were ganging up on Tom. I was smiling sweet tears of revenge at our little feathered friends, especially when I saw the whole murder crowded around Tom's house like it was a set from Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. The aftermath. Needless to say, Tom and his family did not have a pleasant experience the remainder of the school year. There was at least one crow in front of his house watching and waiting for him to come out so he could peck chase him around. And every afternoon, the murderer was protecting Ethan on his walk home. Of course, Tom's parents tried to protect their kid by swinging baseball bats and other things to keep the crows away. But we quickly learned that crows talk to each other, and soon the whole murder was on them too. They tried to take legal action against Ethan, his parents and me for training the crows to attack Tom, but that got thrown out the window really quick because they had no proof of us training the birds, as they had been gone all of summer break and none of the neighbors wanted to help them. Apparently the murder of crows weren't the only ones Tom's family pissed off. So for the rest of the year, Tom had to be driven to and from school so he and his family wouldn't get attacked. When summer started, they moved away, probably to be rid of the murder of crows. Ethan has moved on to middle school, but we still visit the murder and leave shiny things for them, just in case. Story 6. My stepbrother Nico, 29, has recently got engaged to a woman called Jenny after dating for 2 years. We all tried to welcome Jenny, especially knowing that she grew up in the foster care system and didn't have family. We tried to get to know her, but she seemed to want an instant intimate connection rather than building one. Me and my younger stepsister Chelsea, 22, bore the brunt of her neediness, but our parents have also expressed concerns. Since she met us, she has been trying to insert herself into pictures, family disputes, and social events. She has no boundaries. We've all talked to Nico about it so many times, even sitting him down as a family, and he keeps saying he will talk to her, but nothing changes, and it's got worse since the engagement. She tried to make me her maid of honor, demanded my mother throw her a bridal shower, started calling my parents mom and dad even though they asked her not to, and reached out to distant family members that we don't even talk to tell them about the engagement. Last week, we were all Chelsea, Nico, me, and our partners staying at our parents' place. Jenny, Nico, and my BF were the only ones not up yet, and the rest of us were in the kitchen. Chelsea, my mom, and I were talking about taking a weekend trip. Jenny came in, having overheard us, saying it sounded like fun, and proceeded to invite herself along. I was pretty annoyed by this and said she couldn't just invite herself in. Jenny said why wouldn't she be invited? And I said because marrying Nico doesn't give you a blanket invite to every single thing all his family does. Jenny got upset and said she would really like to be included in our family, since it was the only one she knows and she doesn't have a proper family. I said I know that, and we all sympathize, but that doesn't mean we owe you a new one. The whole room was silent, and Jenny got up and went back upstairs. She didn't come out the rest of the day, but Nico came down to chew me out over what I said. Our parents defended me, saying he had an opportunity to talk to Jenny and he didn't. He and Jenny left the same day, and he's now only keeping low-level contact with everyone. When I've spoken to him since, he's just said I went way too low with what I said to Jenny, and that I've set her back mentally, and that she's really down. I do feel bad, but I also feel like Jenny has been overstepping. We are all open to a relationship with her. We all have good relationships with partners in the family, but she never really made a genuine effort to build relationships with us. She just decided she was entitled to them, which I think isn't fair. I don't know if I should reach out to Nico or Jenny with a more fervent apology, which I will if I have really screwed up here. I don't want to be the reason Nico stops talking to us. I just feel like he dropped the ball by letting it get to this point. Edit: okay, I'm adding this because I thought it was implied, but maybe not. We do push back when Jenny is being intrusive. I can't count how many times I have said, Jenny, I'm not comfortable talking about my sex life / therapy / medication, etc. It's really personal. Can we just change the subject? We move on from the conversation, but the next time I talk to her, it's back to square one. Same with my parents. They politely ask her not to call them mom and dad, and she stops for the duration of that conversation, and then starts again next time. We've never had a more in-depth conversation with her. We offered, and Nico said no. He would talk to her. Edit 2. For everyone saying I should consider Jenny's family because she's engaged to Nico. That isn't what I meant with that comment. I commented this elsewhere, but I'm copying because it encapsulates what I was trying to get across. I never said or meant that she isn't part of the family. I guess what I meant with what I said was, you can't parachute yourself in and expect us to be the family you deserve. Because the family every person deserves is one with their mom and their dad, and it's happy and it's from birth, and you don't have to do anything to earn it. Sadly, not everyone gets that. I know I didn't, and I know how much it must suck for her to feel like she has to work for what other people got for free. I have a shitty bio dad, so I kinda know. You think, why do I have to be good and clever and kind and a million other things to have a good family, while all anyone else has to do is just be born? And it's the worst. But when you come into a family that already exists, that's the way it is. They learn to love you, and it takes time. My stepdad didn't love me the second he met me, or love me just because he loved my mom. He got to know me, and figured out who I was as a person, and he loved me for me. We wanted to have that opportunity with Jenny, and maybe that doesn't feel good enough for her, and I guess it's not really fair that she doesn't have the other kind of unconditional love, but I don't think that's up to us, or anyone, to fix. That's just my view. Ooh, that's a tricky one for sure. What do you guys think here? Was Op justified doing what she did? Or was she just plain mean and selfish? I'm really interested about knowing your opinion on this one specifically, because I can't really tell myself. Let me know in the comments below.